Phase 4 is the problem. Guys, welcome back to Geek Rants here on the Geeks & Co. YouTube channel. I am Messiah Complex Cosplay, and I've got another rant this week. As you can see behind me, I am going to be talking about, that's right, the now sort of misnamed Marvel Cinematic Universe, otherwise known as the MCU. Pretty easy target right now because it's so huge and so popular. That's actually part of the problem. Now, when I'm recording this, we are in early February. We are about to launch into Phase 5. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I believe, is the start of Phase 5. So Phase 4 has just completed. And Phase 4, without getting into specifics of what came out in Phase 4 is the problem. Because I don't know if you remember or not, cast your mind back, friends. Back in the wee years of 2008, when the first Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk movies came out, and then the subsequent movies that came out after that, you got your Captain America, you got your Thor, you ended up getting films individually of 4 separate comic book superheroes that ultimately led to the first Avengers movie. All those characters teamed up together after their individual films. It had never been done in Hollywood before, and it blew our minds. And the key to that, the key to the success of that, was taking that time, establishing those characters in their individual movie franchises. 2 to 3 movies a year. Those 2 to 3 movies a year, even the ones that weren't Avengers movies, felt like a big deal. You would get trailers months beforehand. You would know the release date months beforehand. You would look forward to that film coming out. And let's be fair, a lot of those, maybe not a lot of those, but some of those early Marvel films were not exactly bangers. Iron Man 2, Thor: The Dark World, I could go on. They weren't all winners. But the journey was worth the payoff. Because even if it wasn't, that particular film wasn't a winner, it was still an event. And it still set the stage in a major way for the payoff film that was to come. And of course, over the first 3 phases, we got the ultimate payoff pair of films with Avengers Infinity War and then Avengers Endgame. Because by then, we were still based in a cinematic universe. These films were being viewed in cinemas, where it felt like a big deal. There's a reason why Infinity War made over $2 billion and Endgame is the second highest grossing film of all time. Because you wanted to see these films in theaters. Because that was the best way to go and view them. Because they were huge events. And then Phase 4 came with the advent of television shows on Disney+. Now, prior to that, there had been some television shows based loosely in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In particular, you had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC, and you had the Netflix shows. Eventually, especially with the birth of Disney+, all of those shows are canceled. And now, starting in Phase 4, everything moving forward is part of the greater MCU. Everything ties into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what used to be 2 to 3 films a year, now you're getting 4 to 6 television shows on top of at least 3 films a year. They don't feel like events anymore. They don't feel like there's a big deal anymore because it seems like every other month or every other week, there's another show coming. And sometimes, especially early on, most of the shows were just taking existing MCU characters and giving them more to do. WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye. Occasionally, you did get a Moon Knight or a Ms. Marvel. You got new characters that were being introduced. But even then, none of it felt like it was a big deal. Marvel and Disney made you feel you still had to watch those shows because references would be made in other media about what you had seen. So Marvel wants you to watch all of this content now. But now the content's been watered down so much that nothing feels special anymore. Nothing feels important anymore. Is there a gap between the TV shows and the movies? I'm sure there's a budgetary gap, but is there going to be, do the movies feel more of an event than the television shows? When you go from 2 to 3 films a year to 9 or 10 properties a year, when you're seeing something basically every month of the year, doesn't that take away? Doesn't that make it so that you really do start to experience superhero fatigue? Aren't you getting a little tired? Are you someone that has kept up with every single minute, second of all the different things that the MCU, that Marvel has done? Does it still feel like it did for you when that first Avengers movie came out, or when Infinity War came out, or when Endgame came out? I don't know. I can't speak for you guys, but I can tell you for me, it absolutely does not. Getting past Endgame was already going to be horrifically difficult for Marvel Studios and the Mouse House. The amount of films, 22, 23 films, whatever it was, over 10 years to tell that story, to take us on that journey, to finally get us to the peak and then drop us over the edge. And then instead of just coming down slightly and then maintaining and going up slightly again, clearly the plan was to bottom us out again and slowly build us up again. Only instead of slowly building us up again, they put a conveyor belt on there and they're just trying to rocket us up there by inundating us with content. I never thought back in the heady days of the late 80s and early 90s, when I'm collecting comic books and reading comic books, that I would sit in front of a camera about to post on YouTube and complain that there's too much superhero comic book content right now. But here I am. I don't want to be doing this. I didn't want this to happen, but here we are. There's too much. It has to be scaled back so that, in particular, the films feel important again, feel like must-see events. I feel right now, if I don't see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that there's going to be a million references to it between now and the next movie anyways, and certainly a million references between now and the next Avengers movie. I don't need to go out and watch that film. And I probably don't need to tune in to whatever 2 or 3 TV shows are going to be on in between then and now either. It's so much of it. I'm going to glean so much of it just on the periphery, but then even having only watched maybe half or a third or a quarter of the content that's going to come out. Sure, there may be 1 or 2 little weird references I don't get, but it's not going to be anything earth-shattering. We need to go back. We need to scale back. Marvel's not going to do that as long as people keep watching these shows on Disney Plus and going to the films. As long as people are still consuming this much content, they're going to keep producing this much content. Why stop the cash cow now? But I have a nasty feeling 5 to 10 years from now, Marvel's going to look back at this and kick themselves in the ass, realizing they probably could have continued this trend for a lot longer than they did before people finally hit a wall and were like, I've just had to, that's enough. I need a break. It's too much. It's happened in Hollywood before. And even without streaming services, it's happened in Hollywood before. And I can see it happening here in front of my face now. Guys, that's it for this week. I don't know what we're going to be talking about next week. Make sure you tune into the podcast, the Geek Boutique podcast, live on YouTube every Thursday at 7 o'clock. Stay geeky, friends. Hit that like and subscribe button, by the way, down at the bottom. We'll catch you next week.